talk a little California recruiting. After teams have been raiding the Peach State, I wanted to talk to Adam Gorney about who is doing a great job in recruiting California this cycle. Adam, we've seen a resurgence from USC, but who else is recruiting California really well?
Yeah, I think it all starts with Ohio State coming out here and getting the modern day wide receivers, Chris Henry Jr. and Caden Dixon Wyatt. That's incredible to start there. But then as they work through their quarterback recruiting, they bring out Mission Viejo quarterback Luke Fahey late in June. He made it clear to Indiana, like, I like you a lot, but if Ohio State offers, I'm going there. So, he told me that he was, if Ohio State didn't offer, he was going to go through airport security and call the Indiana coaches and commit on the spot. But that call never came because Ohio State offered. Billy Fessler was out here multiple times to see him throw. And then they go to Sarah down the road and get Kari Wilder, one of the best edge rushers in the country. So those four players right there is like an all-star team of Southern California talent. And then staying in the West, they get two big-time offensive linemen in Aaron Thomas and Tucker Smith in Arizona. So they've done a phenomenal job. And then I think Texas A&M is the other team that really stands out. USC and Oregon are going to do well, but these other teams coming in are really, really making an impact. For Texas A&M coming off, an average season, there are definitely some things to build on in Mike Elko's first year. But to come into South San Diego and get Brandon Arrington beating Oregon for him is tremendous. And he is a phenomenal sort of three-way player, offense, defense, special teams, super fast. I think we've covered his track stuff, ad nauseum there. But not only him, Madden Williams is locked up with Texas A&M, kind of shut down his recruitment. Samu Moala was really getting hit hard by UCLA. He turned them down to stay with the Aggies and Caleb Tafua. So, again, Texas A&M is another school who's done really, really well in California, but also in other parts. Helaman Kasuga, their quarterback commit in this class, and Cameron Hamill from Goodyear, Arizona, Desert Edge. Both of those schools, Ohio State and Texas A&M, have just been absolutely phenomenal out here.
Let's talk a little Trojans Ducks over the battleground state of California. USC seems to be holding their own. You mentioned Brandon Arrington flipping Jonas Williams as well. Is USC winning a little bit more of these battles than maybe we have seen in the past 2 or 3 years?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think with this new revamped recruiting staff, they have hit the ground hard, and they're keeping local prospects home and getting a lot of national players to come in as well. There was a time maybe 5 years ago or so when USC was really sputtering, that Oregon would be able to come into Southern California and basically get whoever they wanted. Like everybody was talking Oregon and no one was talking USC. And I think you remember those days when, everybody at Mater Dei and Bosco was like, why isn't the USC staff ever come by our school? Like, why aren't we getting recruited by these guys? Because we see Dan Lanning and Tosh Lapoy and all these guys always in Southern California. But USC has definitely turned the page there and has a new recruiting strategy. They're getting very aggressive. They're very confident in what they can do. And then again, they have a lot of NIL money, just like Oregon, to throw around to these kids. So getting a kid like Mark Bowman to stay when it looked like he was headed to Georgia, he told me multiple times that Georgia was going to be tough to beat. USC really came in. I think a call with Lincoln Riley, a one-on-one call, was huge there. Kini Pepe is another kid who's playing in Florida, but he's from LA. Talanoa Ely is in Hawaii, but he's from LA. So all these kids coming back, and then keeping Brandon Lockhart, who this time last year looked like he was about to decommit and probably go to Oregon, has kind of locked up that spot. And it's one of the big reasons why they have the number one class in the country.
Yeah, there's a few major battleground states when it comes to recruiting. California's one of them. Texas is one of them. Florida's one of them. But another is the state of Georgia. So we're going to stay on this state theme. Yesterday, we saw Tyler Atkinson, the number one player in the state of Georgia, choose Texas over Georgia. And it got you thinking. You wrote an article on Rivals called "Georgia Coach Kirby Smart Does Not Plan to Change His Strategy." But does he need to? Do you think that Georgia needs to maybe update their recruiting strategy for this new NIL era?
I would say no. And here's the reason why. One, they have the second best class in the country. So it's not like kids are not going there. Top kids are still going there. And I think what Kirby is doing here is smart in a different way. He's not going to have the huge NIL bucks of Oregon and Texas and some of these other schools, and he probably knows it. So what he's doing is saying, look, I won back-to-back national championships. I put so many players into the NFL. If you're a defensive lineman, you're essentially guaranteed an NFL draft spot. And so this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring kids in who are hungry and want to be developed for the NFL. And if you're living your life on social media and going around with your business manager and your dad and your uncle and 5 other agents looking for the biggest payday, we don't want you here. And we're going to make it clear, like he said it at SEC Media Days, we want people who care. I watch, his staff watches tape all day. There's a lot of talented cornerbacks out there. He basically used defensive backs because he couldn't use edge rushers like Tyler Atkinson as an example. That he's going to go out there and get guys that are hungry and want to win. And when we see that in all sports, I think the teams that are hungriest, hungry dog runs fast kind of mentality is what he wants to develop. And then he'll develop those guys into NFL players and SEC and national champions. So I think he needs to have a little bit of a different recruiting strategy. And it's not like once those guys go to Georgia and produce, they're not getting paid. They are getting money. They're getting significant money. But he's just not going to pony up and get into these back and forth, NIL battles that other schools are willing to do or have to do to get that roster going. Now, along the way, there is going to be some pain here, like losing Jackson Cantwell after he hires Drew Rosenhaus as his agent to Miami. That hurts. Losing Tyler Atkinson, who had been on campus 15 times, that hurts. Mark Bowman hurts. Justice Terry hurts. But he still has the second best recruiting class in the country. There's a tremendous amount of talented players that want to go play at Georgia that aren't just chasing a paycheck.
So when it comes to Georgia recruiting, I mean, it's kind of just the ebbs and flows of recruiting, right? And when the games get played, how much of a factor? I mean, we think we have recruiting figured out right now as we sit here in the middle of July, but we forget those 3 very powerful months during the season where kind of the rubber meets the road. How important will it be for programs like a USC to hold on to their commitment class with winning? And how much could a program like Georgia, if they have a great season, come back and maybe circle back on some of these guys that committed elsewhere?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And we all know this, and everyone watching this who follows recruiting knows that if you took a snapshot of recruiting classes in July, it looks tremendously different by December in many, many ways. So, if USC has another, tough season, if they can't figure out their quarterback situation, if it's not looking great, and Oregon is steaming toward a national championship, I think there's a lot of risk there. If Georgia looks great, if they're dominating, and some of the teams that have paid up big money for a lot of the guys throughout the Southeast are struggling, it could get interesting there. So I think you play the long game in recruiting. And I've said this before, like 51 weeks of the recruiting calendar is the soap opera, and 1 week in December is like basically everything that happens down the stretch. So nobody in the business closes better than Kirby Smart. There will be a lot of games to be shown throughout the fall, getting kids on campus and home visits and everything else that go into December. So there's a long way to go here. But if I'm a Georgia fan, I bite the bullet on some of these bigger names that chased money elsewhere. And I'm not going to say, Jackson Cantwell doesn't have a bright future at Miami. Tyler Atkinson doesn't have a bright future at Texas. But those guys looked like almost locks to Georgia until bigger deals came together. So there's a long way to go until December. That 1 week or 2 weeks in December is really when it matters most in recruiting.
Yeah. Always remember in recruiting, the game's got to get played. Adam Gorney with Rivals, thank you for stopping by the Inside Scoop.
Yeah, of course.